Good morning, everyone, or it's morning here in California anyway, United States of America. So again, my name is Andrea Bernat, and I work with Trish Ellis with Attitudinal Healing International. And my role with the organization is the website administrator. So normally I'm kind of the tech person behind the scenes. But today, Trish is traveling in China. She's actually conducting several attitudinal healing trainings in the country over the course of a couple weeks. So she was not able to join us today. I am filling in her very large shoes, so to speak. But she will absolutely be watching this recording, and she will be able to answer any questions you have that come up after the recording. But the focus for today is on our guests, Carlos and Lucero Aguirre. Thank you so much for joining us. And let me tell you a little bit about Carlos and Lucero, just so they can jump into their presentation. They are the co-founders of the CECURA Attitudinal Healing Center in Guadalajara, Mexico. And they'll be able to fill in little details that I miss. But Carlos is a psychiatrist. He is a family therapist and a doctor of homeopathic medicine. And Lucero is a teacher, and she's also a thanatology specialist. She has a master's in psychology. And thanatology, for if you're like me and didn't know what that was until you first got to know her, it's the scientific and psychological study of death and dying, which I didn't even know existed until I learned about her work. And she's absolutely fascinating. They're both absolutely fascinating. Since founding their Attitudinal Healing Center, CECURA Guadalajara, in 1994, both Carlos and Lucero have devoted so much of their time, their lives, really, to sharing attitudinal healing with people in their community. They have expanded that work into schools. They have worked in hospitals, prisons, and other institutions, again, in local communities, but also throughout the entire country of Mexico. And as you can see, thanks to the miracle of technology, they're able to join us all over the world. When it works really well. So today's webinar is one of a series of 12, one per month, that Attitudinal Healing International is fortunate enough to do with the participation of attitudinal healing practitioners around the world. And our topic for this month, for July, is children and the mourning process. So children who are mourning, working with children, going through loss, trauma, all of those really challenging things that even as adults, we work so hard to grapple with. And then children need that extra special love and support and just kind of an interesting set of tools. And I really think this presentation is going to be powerful. Carlos and Lucero have amazing experiences that they'll be able to share, and also insights that from the little bit I've glimpsed of their presentation, I feel will kind of open up a new world of possibility if you are doing work in your family or community with children and or adults who are going through, some of the more challenging processes of life. Carlos, Lucero, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. I'm going to bow out of my camera and let you take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, everyone. Actually, we're not broadcasting from Guadalajara. We have the fortune of being in our vacation home in Boulder, Colorado, and we just have an amazing view of the mountains right now, which give us more inspiration to be with you and to talk about attitudinal healing in trauma or loss in children.
Hello, I'm very happy to share what is my passion. Working with children is my passion. I just learn so much from them and feel so comfortable being with them. And even I have healed some of my own traumas and losses since I was a child through their experience, because we give and receive all the time. We started a group 24 years ago, and it was a group of children who had lost their fathers and the 80% of that group, there were 24 children, and they lost their fathers through murder. So we had to be started with a special situation and special work with the children. What I most love about children is that they have their magical thought that can be still tarnished by nature, by the moon, by the clouds, by the sun, by the flowers, and it's good because we have lost some of the attention to nature that can marvelous us from life. But also that magic thought, those magic thoughts go to fear, to trauma, to the most fear moments that they have gone through. So we can use both. We can use both to reestablish their confidence and to be able to share among the children in both aspects. So that's what we have been doing throughout the 24 years, and that's what we want to share with you.
Yes, and as a child psychiatrist, I also enjoy seeing children very much and helping them through with their trauma and their grieving processes that they have to face in life. And I think that together with the wisdom and experience of Lucero, we've been able to help many children, especially in the terms of violent losses, which are very devastating in a child's life. And as a child psychiatrist, I recognize that we can do not help any child if we are not aware of the stage of development that he's in. We have to be very conscious in what stage of development he belongs to, in order to use the tools that he has in his mind and in his environment to help him out. So that's why in the first slide that I'm showing you, uh, we have these stages of development uh, from since they are born to the young adulthood of 18 years. And these stages show that in every stage, a child has a task to fulfill in order to keep building up his development. We don't want to tire you much with a lot of theoretical issues. We are going to try to be very simple about this, because I think what is important is what we do with the child. But we have to go through this rapidly, and I'm going to sign out. I'm going to highlight the task that every child has in the different stages of development. And at the same time, Lucero will talk to you about what is the impact of loss and trauma in that certain stage. So we're going to start by seeing the first stage of the child since he's born to 2 years of development. And the most important thing at this stage is a sense of trust. The child needs to be in an environment that he can trust in order to feel secure and develop all his senses and motor abilities. And he has to experience and become aware of his surroundings. And at the end of this stage, he begins to remember and to imagine ideas and experiences. There is a wrong thinking that the child at this stage won't remember much of what is going on in his life, and this is false. The child remembers not the way we remember, not the way we have our memories as older children or adolescents or adults. The child remember this in their deepest part of their brain, and it usually shows up as either as what we call body memories, and they show it also in their behavior. Maybe he doesn't have the exact recognition of what caused the trauma and the events, but he does have the feeling, and in order to help them, we have to recognize this. We have heard that it's very common that he lost his father or his mother. Well, he won't remember. We'll give him another person to fulfill this role, and he won't remember. And that's not true. He will remember. And so
Well, at this age, the impact of loss is at the beginning for the 4 months when they are 4 months old, when they have established that they are now separated from their mother. It's the first representation of a reaction to loss. So it is if the mother is the one that dies. If the father or a sibling dies, this child will live that loss through the mother. Whatever the mother is feeling, he will be feeling. This is very important because usually mothers are, feeling very sad with their loss, and they also have a great responsibility because they think that they should not feel that bad because they are passing that through their children. It is not that way. We have to encourage the mother that she is feeling sad, she is going through a loss process. So the more conscious she is, the better she will feel. And when she tries to hide her feelings, then her reactions will be very bad for their children because they will lose their confidence, and they will lose their closeness to the mother. So I always tell the mothers that they should express their feelings and maybe cry with the child, but try to encourage them to do the same, and let that feeling go by instead of just repressing it, which would be more dangerous. The feeling of abandonment and mistrust is the one that has to be recognized, because when the child feels confident again, he will feel better. If the mother itself is the one that dies, as I was telling you, then they have to have someone that will give that confidence, and it is better to have the same person, not change from one person to another. And this is how they can share their losses with the mother. For me, it has been very interesting to see children that age, not 4 months old, but 2 years old, and they are capable to express many things, maybe through drawings, even if they draw lines or circles. But the colors they use, the way they do their drawings, and also through behavior, and they always try to find a safe environment. In our group, we have had 2-year-old old children, and they just get closer to the facilitators. They would like to sit on our lap and be hugged, so they could be contained. But this is giving them a very confident environment, and other children help the little ones. They also contain them, and to have the same feeling of trust among the group helps them a lot.
next, we
Well, I already talked a little about this. Inadequate and unpredictable cares will have the child have a different frame. The safetier the child feels, the better. So you can be crying and telling him, I love you, I will take care of you, I will be with you. That's the most important part for a child. Otherwise, they would be vigilant to the expressions of danger and anger. Whatever we repress, like if we repress sadness, we might express it as impotent or anger, and they don't understand what's going on, so they would lose their trust and confidence.
Okay. So we go to the second stage from 2 to 4 years, and the child has to deal with developing his sense of autonomy against feeling shame and doubt. At this time of the at this stage, there is a muscular and annual maturation. The process of retaining and releasing. But the child at this age is completely egocentric and has a wonderful magical thinking. Egocentric means that his ego is fully developing. The ego is that part of our mind that help us to recognize the world of matter and form. And the child is recognizing his body and is recognizing that he's, in terms of matter and form, separated from others. So his ego is going at this stage at full steam. I remember my daughter when she was at this stage, and we were walking down the street, and there was a wonderful full moon, and he told me, he says, "Dad, look how the moon is following me." So this is a very important expression of the egocentricity that the child experiences at this time. And of course, the magical thinking. He likes to imagine things and to have fantasies of what they would like the world to be. They develop the ability to explore and to appreciate the world, and this is a stage where they ask all kinds of questions. You are driving down the street with a child like at this age, he will ask why for everything. Why is the car running? Why is that woman walking her dog and all that? And at this point also is what so important that he experiments the desire to make his own choices, to give him this autonomy. And parents should respect this, should respect the ability of the child to make his own choices according to his age. Otherwise, he will feel shameful, or he will have a doubt whether his choice is correct or not. And
Well, this is a very interesting stage for children that are going through a loss. They can cherish marvelous things. They can they can
sure.
express how they feel. That his father is with God. There was a 2-year-old boy who lost his father, and he was with his mother, and we were working together, and he took the phone and handed it to her mother, and he said, "Mom, my dad." And the mother said, "No, your dad cannot talk over the phone." He insisted, "Mom, my dad." And the mother said, "No, your dad cannot talk over the phone." So he insisted, and he said, "Mom, God, talk to God. Tell God about my father." So then the mother, crying, took the phone and started talking to God about his father. So these ways of expressing their magical thinking, and the way to try to protect their mothers in a way to be protected by their mothers themselves is marvelous, because it gives you just the space and the time to kind of express something and feel more confident about what they think and what they can do to help their mothers, and that is great. There is a comprehension of that incomplete. They don't understand that that is final. They just understand that the father is gone because they cannot see him. Of course, as I was telling you the example, they know that a father is in heaven and with God, and for them it's easy to realize this situation. But in the magical thought, it's also difficult, because sometimes parents, in order to help children, try to change the words and say things to make it simple. And they can say, your father was sleeping and God decided to take him with him because he needed him there. So then the child, with that magical thought, doesn't want to go to sleep, because that means that God might decide that they can
He's
take
next.
him, and that makes him being insecure. So even if they are little, they have to be told the right and the correct words, with very good frame, very few words but clear. Dying, your father is not here. Your father is not coming back. The body is not working anymore. You have to tell them that before saying that they went to heaven, or the transcendent part of that. It's very important. The regressive aggressive behavior for lack of security. This is a time that the children, when they don't feel secure, they can be very aggressive. They can hit the mother, they can hit everyone, they can run away. The behavior is difficult. Behavior is a way to know how they are feeling. So I always ask the teachers and the parents to first validate the feeling and then correct the behavior, because we are used to correct the behavior, be very strict in correcting the behavior without validating the feeling that is behind that behavior. So you can say, I understand you are angry. I am not going to allow you to hit me, for example. So that makes him feel more secure. When they know that the mother has the control, they feel a lot more secure. When that, not when the mother passes the control to the child, but because she doesn't know what to do. Then he feels very insecure, and his behavior will become worse and worse. They ask inappropriate questions. I always tell the parents, just answer them simple but clear and truth. The fewer words, the better. Where is my father? Your father is not here. He's not going to be here anymore. His body didn't function well, so he's not going to be here anymore. Even if he doesn't have that complete comprehension, that's a truth, and he will incorporate that truth into his life eventually, or little by little. Grief is usually not validated. Mothers tell them, I am very sad. I don't know why you are so angry and why you are not doing or behaving well. That's not correct. It's very important to validate their grief. Even though they show it through aggression, they can be validated. It's valid to be to be angry, but it is not valid to do this or that. In a stress environment, he has less control. Of course, when he is stressed, he has less control, and when they have less control, their behavior is going to be more difficult. So it's a way of kind of understanding between the parents and the child in order to lower that stress environment. Begins to internalize a sense of helplessness. And there was also the regressive part. They can go back to being, more like asking the mother more to hug them, to hold them, go back to the bottle drinking, and maybe even do not control their sphincters. Okay, if they already have done that.
And we have the next stage, the third stage, where the child is dealing between developing his own initiative against feeling guilty. Okay, initiative and imagination go together. Uh, why is guilt goes against initiative? Because at this stage, from 4 to 6 years, the child becomes very active and it's becoming more autonomous and independent from the mother and from the father, and he's seeking to do his to do things according to his own initiative, according to his own reasoning. and he might make a lot of mistakes. Say, for instance, a child that is hungry and the table is already been set, and he tries to reach a slice of bread, and in trying to reach the slice of bread, he pulls the the dishware, and everything falls out, and mother comes and screams at him and says, "Look what you did! You are a bad boy." And that's the guy. The child feels guilty about what he's done. And if the mother would take another response, like knowing that the child is using his own initiative, and he would come and said, uh, I know you tried to do it your way and the way you wanted to do it, but you see, you can do it better. You made a mistake. You did throw some dishes on the floor. Let's pick them up. And I'm glad you tried to do it yourself, but you have to be more careful, not to make him feel guilty. It's a time where the child becomes jealous and with rivalry. I'm sorry, and being competitive with his siblings. Uh, the child starts at this age breaking the family borders to become more integrated to the outside world. And he starts developing a moral sense. The child, this stage is with the child is very much oriented to differentiate what's good or bad, even that we know that since they are very, very young, even from 1 year old, the child can distinguish the good from the bad. It's not at this stage that he becomes very, very moral strict about good and bad. And uh, he starts to develop more physical abilities, body control. He learns to cut and he learns to do other things, and he starts developing his self-image. The how he projects to others. The integration of the father figure is very important. He's trying to name everything. He starts doing things by trial and error, and tries to start solving problems. And he is asking a lot of questions that he needs exact explanation. At this stage, he's still in what we call the concrete thought. Seeing is believing. I have to see things. I have to make the proof of reality to know what's really happening.
Well, as I was telling you, they have a better comprehension about that, but still vulnerable, very vulnerable to face its implication, the absence of the person. Guilt over fantasies. Guilt is always present in any loss. I have been able to understand better the guilt feelings through the child than well, that are just like the adult. It doesn't matter how old they are. There was a 4-year-old boy in our group, and I wanted to really bring up guilt because there was an adult person that was stuck in her guilt feeling because she had a project of kidney transplant, a special non-profitable organization with her dad, and they would work together. Her dad was a medical doctor, and her dad had a heart attack outside of the hospital going to work, but she wasn't able to come right at that moment, and the father died. So her guilt feeling was that if she had arrived in time, the father would be alive because they had this project, and she would have told him about the project so he wouldn't die. So I invited her to the group, the children's group, and I started encouraging to share in a safety environment, as our groups are, about guilt. And here comes a little 4-year-old boy, and he starts talking about his guilt feeling. And he says, you know, I feel guilty because my father was not feeling well and he went to vomit to the bathroom, and I didn't want to go inside there. But if I had been with him while he was vomiting, he would be alive because he loved me so much that he would have decided not to die. So it was exactly the same at that other 30-year-old woman who shared that project with the father. It was just exactly the same. I think this guilt and these fantasies about the person that dies have to be more with the idea of trying to change any single minimum detail in order to have the frame again with the father with them. So I have found that these differences are very minimum between adults and children. Just children are easier to explain or talk about it. um, they continue to sacrifice exploring or begins to develop age in inappropriate independence. They try to be independent, but it's so inappropriate that they get to be scolded many times. So it's just a matter of talking to them in a different way more than scolding them, trying to find ways in order to be able to recognize their independence and what they really can do and what they cannot do. That will help them feel a lot better. They have lots of control and safety, so that leads them to develop rigid control strategies to manage their anxiety. But those rigid control strategies, they do it to the others, you know, not only to them. I wanted to tell you about an example because I think that examples mostly show us what this is about. A 5-year-old boy whose father died. He died of a heart attack while he was jogging, and he was playing. We have a little dollhouse, and he started organizing the whole set and everything. And he started doing something that he enjoyed with his father very much. He took the little car and put the two boys in the car, and he says the father is taking them to the park because it's Mother's time. Mother stays relaxing in her house, which that really happened in the real life. And then he decides to go all around the room with a car, then brings the car back to the house, takes the two boys, and make the two boys go into the little house, and then he hands me the father figure, and he says, "You can take him. He's not with us anymore." So I took him, and then when I knew what had happened because the mother had told me, but I asked him, "Why isn't he with you anymore?" And he said, "Because he was running, and then something happened to his heart." He said something happened to his heart, so he fell down. But you know, he fell down on the ground, so nothing hurt his body, nothing hurt his face. He fell down on the ground, and on the grass. It was fresh. It was cool. And then they called my mother, and my mother ran to be with him, and my mother kisses him, and then he dies. So it's part of the reality, but he transformed this reality into a more acceptable reality that he could put in his own heart. He changed some of the information she had received in order to make it more at ease for him to feel less hurt. So I also want to share some of these experiences because I think it's more capable to remind and understand these impacts of loss and trauma.
Then the fourth stage is a stage where when the child starts developing his capability of being industrious against the inferiority complex. This is from 6 to 11 years. What we call industriosity is the part of the child, the stage of the child where he tries to accomplish many things. Accomplish things in school, accomplish things in sports, and becomes very competitive. He discovered that he's able to produce. That means to have results, to create and accomplish using internal assets. Remember that the real competence is not against others, it's against yourself, where you feel that you have the internal assets to be competitive with yourself. Mm. And at this stage, they also develop the pride and in these accomplishments. You can see the room of the child at this stage that is probably full of trophies, and prizes that he has won in school or in sports, and he becomes very proud of it. He applies the logical abilities to understanding concrete ideas. Uh, he's in the stage that he can organize and classify the information, and he can think logically about things he has experienced. Uh, uh, I recently had, I'm going to let Lucero talk about the impact of loss on this stage.
Okay, so they have a better comprehension about death, but vulnerable about its implications. As I was telling about the guilt fantasies already, and this feeling of inadequacy. I can tell you my own experience about that. I was 7 years old when my father died of a heart attack, and I had to go back to school almost immediately after he had passed. And it was difficult because I didn't want to talk about my father dying. I didn't want the rest of my group to know that they have a father and my father was already dead. So it was very difficult. I'm sure schools didn't have that. Didn't have that impotency. Didn't have, didn't have that ability to help the children that have just had a recently loss, a very important recently loss. So they didn't talk about it. They just followed their beliefs, and when there was something like having fun or dancing or singing, they would take me and my sisters away from that because we were grieving, and we sat separately. So we started feeling very impotent and very inadequate, inadequate because the rest had their parents. And then I caught myself making a present for my father in Father's Day, and I didn't say a word. I didn't want anyone to know what I was going through. The teacher never said anything. So one of the girls said, "Why is Lucero making that present for her father if her father already is dead?" I felt really inadequate to be in that situation in that class doing that. Unfortunately, nobody did nothing for me. Nobody said nothing. I had to deal it through myself. So I think it's very important to explore the inadequacy that we do really feel because we feel different. One of the things that has been great having attitudinal healing groups is that they create a very safe environment. It doesn't matter how old you are, all of them are there because they have a loss. Some of them they have similar losses, but they feel very close. One, takes the new one by the hand and tells him, "I'll show you where our group is. I'll show you where you are." So they create a very safety environment that helps a lot in order to understand that we are part of the world, even though we have lost a loved one. Okay. There's also impotency. You try to help, of course, because of being fearful. You try to help your other parent. If you lost your mother, you try to help your father. If you lost your father, you try to help your mother. And sometimes you believe that you can. I had a 7-year-old boy that say, I am going to protect my mother. And I say, how are you going to do it? I have my savings and I am going to protect my mother. So we have to tell them that they cannot protect their mothers, that they can love their mothers, but their mothers protect them. And we encourage the mothers to tell them that they are in charge of them, that they are capable to take care of themselves and them, to liberate them from trying to be the ones that become the one that takes care of the adult. The adult takes care of the child doesn't take care of the adult. In this situation, anger is seen as a better reaction, more acceptable, and because they feel more in control when they are angry than when they are sad. Of course, when we explore these feelings in the group, and as I tell you, having different ages and different times of the grieving process and different losses, it makes it so clear for them that they feel very comfortable understanding that anger is not the feeling that gives you more power. All feelings give you power when you recognize the feeling, name the feeling, validate the feeling, and then find a way to express it. So they learn to find those ways to express it. One time we make masks on feelings, and some decided to draw in the mask the sadness, and some decided to draw anger, and some decided to draw shame. So some kids finished their project first. So I asked them to do another feeling on the opposite side of the mask. So they created two masks on the same one. And then when they finish, I asked them to put their mask on and express their feelings. And there was a boy trying to talk about sadness, trying to talk about anger because he felt more, powerful with anger than with sadness. And he said, "It's funny, I'm talking about anger, and what I see is sadness." So then we talk about it, how we sometimes cover a feeling because we don't know how to express it, maybe with an anger expression, but there's a profound sadness inside. Okay, sometimes they withdraw because they feel shame.
Yeah, I recently had a child this age, and this is not about exactly death, a grieving process about death. It's more about trauma. This child and his brother live with the mother and the father obviously was a psychopath, and he was very, very abusive psychologically and physically to the mother, not to the children, though. To the children, he was not violent, but to the mother, he was terrible. Finally, the mother arranged, after many, many difficulties, to divorce him and to put a restraining order against him, only with her, not with the children. And so the child was very much traumatized, but all this time the father had been so abusive with his mother, and he witnessed everything. After the father left the house with the divorce trial, the child became very, very abusive himself with a little brother, bullying, and doing very, very bad in school, and he became very, very angry towards the mother, and he became very, very aggressive also towards the mother, and the mother didn't know what to do with him. She thought that the father leaving, everything was going to be nice and easy in her household, and she was going to have a wonderful life with the children, and this did not happen. Well, we know in family therapy, seeing the family as a system, that sometimes this phenomenon happens in the family, when the aggressive person is out of the system, another part of another member of the family takes the role of the aggressive person. And anyway, he was very, very upset, and the mother came to me with him, and the first time he didn't want to come in the room with his mother. He stayed outside in the waiting room, and he was pouting and very angry. And he said, and excuse me if I use this word, he says, why did you bring me with this asshole? I don't want to see him, you know, and he's not going to help me. And he stayed in the waiting room, and the mother came in and explained everything to me. I didn't force him to come in the room, but when I came out with the mother, I just went to him, and without touching him, I just said him very softly, it's all right to be angry, and it's fine. And maybe next time, if you want to, you can come in for 5 minutes, And so the next week they came, and sure enough, the child came in, and he signaled with his hand, and he said, only 5 minutes. I said, yeah, only 5 minutes. He sat down and says, listen, I know you are very angry. I recognize that. And it's all right if you are angry, but maybe it's my imagination. I don't know if it's true. Maybe underneath that anger, there is a lot of pain, and there is a lot of suffering that makes you feel very, very sad. And he nodded with his head, and tears came out of his eyes. And he says, let me tell you something. Maybe I can help you. Why don't you give me the opportunity of giving me 2 sessions, and maybe I can help you with that. And he nodded with his head, and he said, okay, I'll see you next week, and we're going to be together for an hour. Is that all right? And he said, yes. So he came back the next week, and I started working with him. And all of a sudden, it dawned to me that I had to use the Gimme Gimme's book, that wonderful book that Jerry Yampolsky and Diane wrote about the Gimme Gimme's. And we went through the book, and he was very interested. And then when we finished, he turned to me and he says, do you really think I am a gimme gimme? And I says, no, I don't think you are a gimme gimme. I think you are using the disguise of a gimme gimme because you thought you needed it. But one thing we can do is to help you to get out of that disguise. And he says, I want to. I don't feel well with it. So he came back the next week, and the mother reported me that he had changed his behavior a lot. He was very, very close to being suspended from school, and they, according to his change, they put him in probation. So what I want to say on is how these symptoms in children, that we condemn so much, their bullying and their hyperactivity and their aggression, they're only what I call symptoms that the child has because they are in survival mode after the trauma. So we have to be very aware of that, of not to judge the behavior of these children, but to know that underneath this behavior, there is always some fear, some pain, some sadness going on, and this only is a cry for help.
And talking about fears, they also come through nightmares. And when you have already created a safety environment, that for me the group is, they can tell about their nightmares very easily. We have to create a session just talking about them, and they start bringing them up. And well, the only thing that really we have to fear is fear itself. So recognizing fear help us liberate from it.
And the fifth stage is the stage where from 12 years old to 18 years old, or that means all the adolescence period, is to identify, to have the sense of identity against role confusion. This is the time, of course, during the teenage years, adolescence, where the physical growth happens very, very rapidly, and the sexual maturity becomes a very important issue at this stage. There is a crisis of identity. The, the teenager is looking around to see how he can find his identity. The body image is very important, the sexual image and the self-concept, and for the first time at this age, future becomes real and meaningful. At this time, the teenagers start thinking, what's going to happen with myself when I become an adult? What's going to be my area of work or whatever. He reasons logically now about the abstract ideas and experiences, and he already has a deductive and inductive reasoning. He becomes interested later on, closer to the 18 years, interested in ethics, politics, and social sciences, because he knows that he has to to be an important part of the world in these issues. Mm. Uh, if the teenager fails to fulfill his identity, he becomes depressed with a feeling of uncertainty. He becomes identified with a gang rather than with a positive figure. He becomes disoriented, and as a compensation, he becomes overpowering. Mm.
Well, this is a very interesting stage. They are capable of expressing better, but they are covered with some mechanisms of defense. I'm going to start telling you about a little boy, 12-year-old boy. His father committed suicide and he found the dead body. And he was very angry. He was very, very angry. He would say, silly father, why did you do this? He was angry in school. He would get involved into fights and all that. When suddenly the mother was diagnosed with a tumor in her leg, accordingly, it was not a cancer tumor, but she still had to have chemotherapy because the tumor was kind of thread into the muscle, and gave her some, very bad moments of even consciousness and that. So he was the eldest one. There was a 9-year-old boy and there was a 6-year-old girl. Sometimes he learned how to go into behind the wheel and park the car while the mother was, not feeling well. And he was very also very, very scared about his mother dying. So he would go up at night and check that she was alive. She had everything against feeling confident. And so what he decided is to go through an indifference protection. If you would ask him something and he would just raise his shoulders and he said, no, doesn't matter, doesn't it doesn't matter. So I talked to the mother and I talked to the school also, and I said, this is a protection he's having because of all the things he's going through. So we have to leave that protection to him right now. We are just going to be sure that that protection doesn't stay there. So he went a couple of months, a month and a half, until the mother got better, and she took care again about the rest of the kids, and she was capable to be strong and be the mother. So he went, was able to liberate his indifference. And one time I asked him, why did you go through the indifference? And he answered many, many things. And I asked him about other feelings, and he was capable of talking about fear. Talking about fear is like you think there's nothing around you, but everything is around you. And then he draw things and he described that sadness is something like come to your heart and make you cry because it's the only one to express it. And shame, he says, it's like you don't want anybody to see you. He was very shameful about what his father had done. And he says you put yourself into a little cup, and you feel very little, and you become very little, so nobody sees you, and suddenly they break the cup and you are seen. So he went through all of them, and he didn't draw anything about his indifference. And then he said, indifference is like the air that it is around us. We breathe that air, we feel comfortable with the air, but we don't see it. So he was capable to liberate that indifference. It's very important to know if that indifference is a mechanism of defense. It is important to be careful and not try to take it away from them because it's really defending them. You know? They are fearful of regression. They don't want to feel younger. They want to feel stronger. And they start acting like adults, and sometimes they get they encouraged to be adults, and sometimes you stay being an adult although you are 12-year-olds. you know uh, it's something that has to be made conscious in order to really move from it. Just use it as a defending, but just then move from it. Um, they are rescuers. They want to rescue their friends, but mainly they want to rescue the mother or the father, whoever is. They have a strong feelings, and that would be a high risk to the kids, as I am telling you. Just be aware of everything is all right. Every feeling is correct. Just don't stay there. So we have to be able for them to be conscious of it. uh, they um, they like to be really with creating strategies with other children. They feel better when they talk to the friend, when they talk to their cousins, when they talk to other kids the same age. Again, the group will give them that protection and that way of coping. These strategies that they need with control and relying on the same age, and just being controlled by the facilitators so they can express correctly. And the only thing that is very important in any kid or even in an adult in these situations is isolation. It's okay to withdraw a little from the social activities, but it's not okay to stay withdraw or stay in isolation. I think that the best thing to solve the loss and the trauma itself is with others, because others are also part of our net of protection and help, and we need to see that part, that net that will give us the strength to come out of all these situations. We have been talking about development, and I'm going to just point out that we use two authors. One is Eric Erikson, which talks about the biological, the sociological and psychological development, and the other is about the cognitive part of the development of child, and we use Piaget. So we mix them and we put them together in a way to understand loss. I also wanted to point out that when we talk about loss, and especially in our experience in our center, we really talk about loss mainly about death, but it can be divorce, it can be moving from one a place to another, it can be moving from one school to another. There are many losses in life, even just at the regular and the normal changes in our environment, in our life, the development, the getting, to be older, a teenager is a loss to stop being a child. So we are talking about loss and trauma because that's what we do mostly in our groups. But I want to tell you that it could be about other losses, and it would be the same because the same fear, the same feelings, the same guilt feelings, the same impotency or inadequacy that we go through. Okay.
Yes, that's the advantage of our groups in attitudinal healing. Is how they find this safe place where they can share all what they feel, and all the facilitators that we have are wonderful with the children and allowing them to express themselves through play or through drawings. And the important thing is that how they listen to each other's stories, and how they help each other with their mutual stories, and and how they start healing themselves. And I have to talk here about a very important issue in children, which is the resilience, the power of resilience that every child has, especially in the traumatic effects. And we have seen that this resilience is enhanced by the attitudinal healing principles and by the sharing in the attitudinal healing groups. Because one important thing about resilience is that the child can find uh, an atmosphere where he can again feel that he has a successful adaptation to the world, and and the attitudinal healing groups are like a microscopic experiment on how they can cope with their issues with other people, how they can open up and share their feelings, and how it's important to learn from others. So we feel that the attitudinal healing groups are a wonderful place to develop this power of resilience that children have, because they are flexible, because uh, they want to live in a different way, uh, uh, as we have here in our last uh, slide, we say in their minds they all become one. And we have the experience of these children that Lucero talked about at the beginning, this group of children in 1994 that are now successful adults, and that they all remain united like in a kind of brotherhood. I don't know if you want to talk a little more about that.
Well, first of all, this is just part of the group. We didn't get all the pictures.
Members.
The members regularly. We have a large group, but you can tell that there are young, very young, and some older kids, and how they can integrate. And well, the first group, as I was telling you, was created with trauma loss. Because there was a big trauma, but they could make drawings, they could share, they would go to their birthday parties, and they became so close, and the mothers became also so close that they still gather together, they still share many things, and they still cooperate with some of what we do with the new groups in attitudinal healing. I was remembering one time. There was a 4-year-old girl, and her father handed her to me, to my arms. So I hugged her, and I had to deal with many things because that day was kind of a little, different. The facilitator for the adult group didn't arrive, and the facilitator that helped me with the children group didn't arrive. There was some kind of a traffic jam, and they couldn't arrive in time. So I asked the rest of the kids to help me, sit down and start the session. When the little girl comes closer to my ear and says, How do I know that someone dies?" And she started doing that same question again. How do I know when someone dies? So I told the rest of the group, and I say, you know, Sophie is asking how does she know that someone dies, because she says that her little sibling, little girl, 2-year-old girl, died. And I say, I want you to answer her question. I want you to tell her, how did you know that someone died? So the first ones that started talking about it were the ones that had lost a sibling, and then that one said, "Well, my mother told me that my brother had an accident, and then they sent me with my grandparents, and but I knew that something was going on." So they started telling their story about how they really really knew that their sibling had died, but suddenly they all gathered together around me. They left their chairs, they just made a group, and then they started getting closer physically, and then they started sharing their own processes, their own experiences, how they knew, it was difficult for them, what helped them. It was the most wonderful session, and when we finished that session, I told them, well, we have to start, closing because this session is going to finish. And they said, no, it cannot be possible. It didn't go so much time. It's just a very little time. So the group got really very united, and they really got they really got close to each other. They were really looking forward to the next session, and of course there was established a very safety moment for them. And from now on they came and they started saying, I want to talk about this, I want to continue telling my story. So in a way they started exploring their story, exploring what was difficult for them, and it's kind of trying to do with their feelings, like a pendulum that goes from the more difficult part to the more easier one, to bring it to balance. And so the group itself was containing each other. So I really tell you, if you are working, wherever you are working, I will encourage you to do a group, because the group with the principles and with the guidelines and with the work that we establish, telling stories or whatever comes up as needed in the group, I think it's the best way to really solve a trauma. Even those memories that are in our body that bring arousal from the same moment that we went through that was difficult. We do a lot of activities together through meditating, through liberating all the memories in our body, movement, because the kids need to move to liberate those trauma memories that they have until they come to a balance again. And I really think it's the best way to solve trauma.
Well, we're open now to your questions. If we can have some questions, and I don't know how. We don't want to get you tired, but we're enjoying this very much, and we're open to questions. Okay.
And if anyone would like to ask a question using their microphone, if it's not already active, if you look to the top of the Adobe Connect window, you'll see 4 little buttons running across the top. And one of those buttons looks like kind of an old-timey radio broadcasting microphone. And if your microphone's not already on, all you have to do is click that microphone button, and that should activate your microphone, assuming that you have an active microphone in your computer. And feel free to call out your name, ask a question, or if you don't have a microphone or you choose not to share vocally, just type your question in chat and I'm happy to read it out loud to vocally share it, and we can go from there. Jacqueline, Kathy, Suzanne, any questions for Carlos and Lucero? Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Okay, so Kathy shares with us today her question. which is it possible that an older child could exhibit loss and or trauma from a younger stage based on their emotional development?
Yes, definitely. That's one point that we want to sustain and emphasize very much, that whatever trauma happened in one stage and that trauma was not treated adequately, the child didn't have the chance to be to be treated or to be to express his feeling even when he was a toddler or whatever, of course is going to show in future stages of development in different ways, as we said, in their behavior, in the fears, in their fears, in their sexual development, or in their relationship, how it could affect the way they relate to others, it depends on the nature of the trauma. But I've seen people, uh, I I saw a man who was 40 years old, and he couldn't be successful. He told me that every time he tried to start a business, uh, uh, everyone would take advantage of him, and that seemed to be, part of his argument in life. Everyone could take advantage of him. And I worked on I worked on his helping him to establish his own limits, But one day it just dawned to me, and I said, when was the first time that you became abused by someone, And just like that, the question came out, and he started crying, and he said, I was abused by my uncle when I was 5 years old, sexually abused by him, and he made me do some sexual acts with him, but I was never able to tell anyone. My mother, I was afraid my mother wouldn't believe me. It was my father's brother, which he admired very much. So I never told anyone, But it showed that this trauma of being abused, sexually abused, had stayed with him all this time of his life, And in a way, he took that role of the being abused, and he created it in his life. So when he realized this trauma, and we went through it, and we went through the body memories, and we went to the to express him all his anger towards this uncle and all his sadness of what had happened, and then we went into the forgiveness part. His life changed completely. So yeah, it's very, very, very important. You're welcome, Kathy.
Well, we have to understand that these reactions to trauma, it doesn't matter what causes it, abuse or verbally abuse, also sometimes from elder siblings, that just maybe because they went through the same thing, or because they are older, they start criticizing the younger. You will never do it. I'll do it better because I'm older. You are doing very simple things. You are always behind. You are always behind. And sometimes these even verbal just comments from the elderly brothers are part of being, in a situation in life that gives you the opportunity to release it until you are capable to know that something is wrong, and you find out where it comes from. What I have found, even in the moment when they got really a very traumatic experience, visualize or listen to a very traumatic experience, is and maybe you all know about it, but it is mainly, the memory is mainly kept in our body. The image is there, but is not the image that brings the hyper arousal continuously of that situation. Is the reaction of the body, anything that could be, experienced through the senses, through our senses, visual, listening, even, our skin, whatever, and anything that brings up that memory, it comes as if it would have happened in that moment. So when you realize this and you are capable of recognize the reaction of your body of that hyperarousal activity of your body, even being tight or being too loose, feeling something in your heart or your stomach or your throat, and trying to encourage people to be capable to say how that feeling is. I always tell them that it is very difficult because we don't have a special language to really talk about our ways our body is feeling. So we have to understand that it can be either cold or hot, either tighten or loose. So, and that they can use it as children is like as if someone would have thrown a big heavy stone to my chest. So children are more capable to talk about their body memories, and if we can talk about body memories memories and release them and be able to recognize them when they come, and just go and scan them without any judgment, without trying to release them, just look at them, kind of see yourself with those reactions, then coming back to the present through breathing and say, this is not happening right now, will bring us a release of those traumatic memories in our body.
There's another question. Okay, if there's not another question, Andrea, you think it's time to wrap this up, or?
Thank you for that extremely articulate answer. I see that Kathy's typing, so while she completes her thought or her question, I actually have a question here that it wasn't submitted, so to speak, but we do sometimes get questions about the webinars and how they might be helpful or what they might address. And this person wrote in this question, and I just think it's very pertinent, and I'm also personally curious. You touched on the fact that during the trauma healing process, the way a child kind of thinks and processes can be very similar to the way an adult can also feel and think and process, even if it's more internally. And I was wondering if you could briefly speak to how this model, this presentation could possibly, can it be applied to like working one-on-one with adults, or would there be a different model for trauma with adults, or is there overlap? Because the person was really asking if this can be applied to adults, or if you have to kind of learn a whole different model, so to speak.
Yes, it can be applied to adults. As a matter of fact, we work with that with adults to in one-to-one, of course, and teach them how to be able to really listen to their body reactions, because they are the ones that keep the memory. It's sometimes we have to help more the adults than the children. The children come to this very easily. The adults have to be guided in order to listen to their body, because when I ask them, right now that you are telling me the story, you are going through the reactions you went through when this was happening. And sometimes they say, well, I feel sad, I feel anger. And sometimes I have to sit in front of them and I say, I'm going to tell you what I see. And I do the same action that they are doing. For example, they have their arms crossed very tightly, and I say, I see that your arms are crossed very tightly, and then I see that your mouth is shut and very tight, So I do the same movements that they are doing, and I tell them I'm just being the mirror of your body reactions, so you can give words to those body reactions. So when I say I see that your arms are tight, then they turn and look their arms like that, just exactly as I am copying or repeating as a mirror, and they immediately uh, leave their arms and stop doing it. And I say it's all right. It's all right if you do that, but it's very important that you notice that you are going through that reaction of your body, because that reaction of your body is exactly the same that you had when you went through that trauma. So it is important just to be aware. And they started being more familiarized with that. And it's so threatening to them to see that their body reaction, they're tightening or they're getting loose and almost falling down, or having all their body, even their toes, very very tight. It's surprisingly to them, but then they start realizing that the body is participating in every experience we have, even in that traumatic specific uh, scene that went through their lives. So that helps them to realize that. And then it's so threatening to see that they realize that their body is participating, that they are doing something that they didn't have any choice of doing. It was just happening, and they thought they didn't have any control of that. Then when they started noticing that they do, just through looking at them, not judging, not changing, not saying if it is correct or incorrect, or not saying if somebody would see it or they would look very weak because of that, just any judgment. And then I tell them, now that you notice how your body is, of course the body relaxes by itself when you notice it. You don't have to make an effort of doing it. I always ask them, now I want you to make conscious of your breathing right now. You don't have to change the way you're breathing. You don't have to do anything. You see that you are breathing right now. So they start making conscious to the way they are breathing. Sometimes they start breathing, hyperventilating and all that, but then the breathing comes to its regular and normal level. And then you have to say, this is not happening right now, and they start feeling more comfortable with it, and then they are capable to repeat that within themselves when the hyper arousal of the image or the situation comes back.
There is another question, Andrea. You want to read it aloud?
Absolutely. And Lucero, thank you. I got a lot out of that. That was just immensely articulate and helpful. Thank you. Okay, so Kathy asks, can you comment on the trauma unfolding on the border and the children and or families being impacted? And I'm assuming Kathy is commenting on the current immigration border situation between the United States and Mexico.
Yes, this is a very actual question and very unfortunate that we have to see this happening, and it has hurt us very much to see all these families taken apart. I don't care about the political reasons. It's not my intention to discuss about this, but only the psychological effects. The trauma in this case is about separating the mother from the children or the children from their mother or their parents. Is very very similar to the trauma, or I say identical to the trauma of kidnapping, because the parents don't know where the child is, wherever he's alive or he's eating or he is sleeping in a warm bed or whatever. And like in any kidnapping, this is very traumatic for the parents because it brings a lot of uncertainty. And we say that this kind of uncertainty is very very painful because you cannot go ahead in your life. You cannot live the next day properly if you don't know where your child is, and how he's doing. And also in the part of the children, they go through the same thing. They probably have a bed, they probably have a decent meal 3 times a day, but they don't have the security of the affection of their parents. They don't have the security of the family togetherness. It's like just they've been dragged away from their own security, uh, and so yeah, there is an impact, and unfortunately, these children, as many children of immigrants, eventually in life are going to suffer from this impact if they are not treated properly. And I think it's the responsibility of the state to grant this help to these children, to help them to overcome this trauma, and I hope they do. I think that is very, very unjust to do this, and thinking as a child psychiatrist, and knowing how deep can these experiences go into it, because when the children are together with the parents, even though they come across the border and they work with the parents on the fields, because we have seen cases like this, we have seen cases of 12-year-old kids that work on the fields with their family, with their father and mother, gathering crops or whatever. And even though they do have hard work and it shouldn't be, but they feel secure with their father and their mother. They feel that they can, that they're still a family, So this is very, very important to know, not only the political issues about this, but the very uh, deep routes of psychological damage that they are doing to these children, And I become very emotional about this, not only as a Mexican, but also as a child psychiatrist, because when it has to do with children, I always get hyper defending them.
Well, we were talking about the development of the children, and we said that the first stage of development is developing confidence, against
Trust.
trust,
Uh-huh.
developing trust against being separation or abandonment. So I know that we as children, and I recall my own childhood, even then we see it as separation. So the worst thing that can happen to a child is being separated from their parents. It's really the worst thing, because they lose the trust, not only in their own parents, because they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand if their parents abandon them or not. They just feel insecure. They really feel abandoned. That's the word. And this abandonment will stay with them all the rest of their lives unless they work with it and solve it. So it's a very, very deep, very, very painful situation. I always think that the word that can hurt a child is this insecurity, taking them apart from their parents. I really think that's something that is very hard to deal with. It's possible, but if they really realize that this is happening, that's the post-traumatic stress. That's the one that is kept inside them. You know, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't they couldn't avoid it. They just feel lack of security and trust.
Thank you. It is an immensely timely issue right now.
Yeah.
Unless there's more questions from our three attendees, I've reviewed my notes and I feel the questions or possible questions that came up were addressed beautifully in this presentation. So yeah, unless Jacqueline, Kathy, Suzanne, if you have questions, please feel free to type them or speak them. Otherwise, Carlos and Lucero, I will invite you to close in whatever way is best for you.
Well, I first of all am very thankful to Attitudinal Healing. Attitudinal Healing has given us many keys, many strengthens to work with children and adults in these processes. And I think it's a great way to reunite and create a very safety environment just through being with our groups. It's good and sometimes necessary to do a one-to-one intervention, but it is also great, as you can see the picture right now, to have a very tiny little girl, which I'm holding there, and a tall one over there. It's very important to know that we're all united. It doesn't matter how old we are. And to have that um, um, way to create these groups through attitudinal healing, through the principles, the guidelines, and through what is more natural in life, that we are all united, and being united when one does it helps everyone. So I think it's great to have attitudinal healing in our lives, in our center, in our country, in our world. Thank you, attitudinal healing. Thank you.
Yes, I also join Lucero in this gratitude to attitudinal healing and to all the people like you, Andrea, and Trish, and Gary, and Diane, and everyone that we have known so wonderfully through all these years, you know. And when I introduced myself now, I said that thanks to attitudinal healing, I'm a psychiatrist in rehab, you know, because attitudinal healing has changed completely my way of exercising my profession, the way I address my cases, and the way I treat children through attitudinal healing is just wonderful. It's just having a complete different view of the human being. And we are so grateful because it has enriched our professional and personal lives so much. Thank you, Andrea, for your effort and for your invitation today.
You are absolutely welcome. And I know Trish feels the exact same way that I do because I talked to her just a
Yes.
little bit ago. And I think this is just going to be an absolutely wonderful presentation for people to go back and revisit and watch again and again because it's a timeless topic and so very helpful. So yes, it looks like we don't have any further questions, and I am complete on my end. So thank you again, Carlos and Lucero, for today. And excuse me. Again, the recording for this webinar will be available, and we will send it out to everyone who registered. And for anyone who's interested in watching the recording of this who was not able to attend, the URL will be available through the Attitudinal Healing International website. And Carlos and Lucero, we will make sure you absolutely have access to it for your community as well. So thank you again, and this was just fabulous.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Andrea.
Andrea. It's
Very
great.
sweet of you,
It's great to be connected with the world. Thank
yeah,
you.
Yes.
and goodbye to everyone.
And thank you for listening, and thank you for
Sharing.
sharing. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.